I now look to Barry Gardiner to continue the case for the proposition.
Mr. President, it's the Chamber of Secrets. Harry Potter has just killed the basilisk, and he's in Dumbledore's office, and he's troubled. He's troubled because he's seen all these similarities between himself and he who must not be named. And he wants to know, why was it that the Sorting Hat put him in Gryffindor and not in Slytherin? And Dumbledore, not unreasonably, reminds him that he actually asked the Sorting Hat to put him in Gryffindor. And that is the moment. That is the moment that Dumbledore utters the most important and profound line in the entire 7 volumes of the Hogwarts saga. You see, Harry, it's our choices that show what we truly are, far more than our abilities. Our choices. Whatever the science, whatever the technology, whoever happens to be in the White House, whatever the economics, we have to choose to do something about climate change. Apathy is the antidote to choice. It's the kryptonite of the Superman that is action. You're students. You know all about it. Apathy is your worst self. Apathy is that student essay syndrome that says, due tomorrow, do tomorrow. Apathy, indifference, lack of interest, impassivity, detachment, coolness, lack of concern. Lack of concern. You see, the problem is not the 13% of the people of the United Kingdom who refuse to accept the science that tells us that climate change is being caused by human activity. The skeptics aren't the problem. Facts don't stop being facts because some bonehead disagrees with them. You don't actually need a majority of the population to agree that dolphins exist. They just do. You wouldn't decide to take a poll to find out whether 7 is the square root of 49. It just is. The problem is not the skeptical minority who don't believe. It's the apathetic majority that know damn well what the science says, but just can't be bothered to do anything about it. The danger lies in the otherwise thoroughly rational person who accepts the science, knows that sea levels are rising, that adverse weather events are increasing in both frequency and severity, that desertification on the equator is leading to famine, but says, what is it to me if in 30 years' time people in Bangladesh have nowhere to go, or people in the Horn of Africa have nothing to eat? Why should that make me sacrifice my standard of living now? Don't expect me to do without my 4x4 Chelsea tractor for them. It's their problem, not mine. Because you are neither hot nor cold, I will spew you out of my mouth. That's what St. John the Divine says in the book of Revelation about those who are apathetic. For most people, distance in miles and distance in time matters, particularly when it comes to how much we care. You see, for many people, the cost of immediate action to tackle climate change is simply too great when set against that more distant benefit of a sustainable future. In economics, it's known as the discount rate. Some people think it is simply an economic problem, that you have to show that it makes economic sense for people now to change their behavior by changing the discount rate. But I think it's not an economic problem. I think it's a problem of ethics. It's a problem of how we overcome human apathy with human empathy. Tonight, the opposition are going to try to reassure you that apathy is okay. Indifference to the future survival of, well, our species is not something to be overly concerned about. They'll try to get you to be apathetic about apathy. So who are these guys? Well, he is the former Secretary of Energy of a country where most of the population believe that climate change is fake, but that professional wrestling is the real thing. This is the Energy Secretary who publicly tried to justify fracking for shale gas and dismiss claims about the damage from methane emissions by reassuring the public that they don't last as long in the atmosphere as CO2. Shame he forgot to mention that even though they don't last as long, over a 100-year period, they are between 28 and 36 times more potent in their warming effect on the planet than CO2. This guy was so apathetic, he couldn't even be bothered to tell the public the truth, even though it was the official scientific finding of the US Environmental Protection Agency of the administration in which he served. Natalie Bennett will ever so earnestly try to persuade you that the danger to our climate comes from a lack of energy efficiency and the need for more renewables. She'll tell you that there are 19 million homes in the UK rated D or below. She will point to the waste of money and the burning of fossil fuels that are contributing to high household bills and to global warming and climate change. But she won't tell you that the biggest impediment to achieving these savings is that people don't want the hassle of having to clear out their loft to lay down layers of rock wool insulation. They can't be bothered to redecorate their living room after they've put thinsulation on the walls or ruined the look of their home by sticking cladding on the outside. It's inertia, it's apathy that is holding us back from doing the things that she will rightly tell you we need to do. We know how to avoid global warming above pre-industrial levels of more than 2 degrees. 80% of all the identified reserves of fossil fuel must stay in the ground. So you've got to wonder why companies keep searching for more. Yes, of course, I'd love it.
Don't you think it's therefore a deception and failure on the part of political leaders and politicians that's led to climate change, as opposed to individual citizens that very often have very little ability to change how political leaders behave, in this case, based on your example?
Well, look, it's a wonderful point. And it places the blame fairly and squarely on the corporations, like Chris did, the corporations and the politicians. But, you know, if the solution is about top-down and not bottom-up, if the solution is Donald Trump, if the solution is from the top down, the world hasn't done very well at building that solution and achieving progress so far. We know how to avoid global warming. You've got to wonder why companies keep searching for more and more fossil fuel. And the answer is that it shows up in their reserves and in their accounts as an asset. And it keeps their share price high. But as the world starts to implement the Paris Agreement, it becomes increasingly apparent that these companies have stranded assets, fuel that they can't burn, plant that is increasingly redundant as the world relies more and more upon renewable technology to achieve its goal of below 2 degrees and as close to 1.5 as possible. The largest institutional investors are pension funds. And up to now, they have not bothered. They just haven't been worried about the overvaluation of their companies that their money's been invested in. But Mark Carney and Michael Bloomberg broke through that apathy. They launched and led the Financial Stability Board's task force on climate-related financial disclosure. More than 100 firms with market capitalization over 3.3 trillion 24 trillion in assets have now supported the need for climate-related disclosures. That's what can be achieved. These are the sort of resources that can be mobilized to combat climate change when you overcome individual apathy. And you know this, because it was you, the students of Oxford, that lobbied your university to look at its own investment portfolio. It was you that started the campaign to get the university to divest from fossil fuels. The university authorities had been apathetic. You were not. You engaged with the university's investment committee. You got the university council to move the fund, so it now has no direct holdings in coal or in tar sands companies. So when you vote at the end of this evening, vote for yourselves. Vote for your achievement in overcoming apathy. Vote in favour of the motion that individual apathy is the greatest danger to our climate, and pledge yourselves to live as the inspiring, the empathetic, the justice-seeking, the change-embracing, the wonderful human beings that you are. Because you see, Harry, it's your choices far more than your abilities that show who you truly are.